You are listening to the second part of the story. You can listen to the first part in the previous video or by following the link in the description under this video. Happy listening. I think the surprise showed on my face. And at that moment, Jonah turned around and smiled at me. She froze when she realized what we were talking about, then smiled even wider when I smiled back, and she turned her attention back to Colleen as we approached the penguins. Mel laughed. Here you see. The ride home was almost as much fun as the ride down, just a little more subdued. At one point, I spotted a tavern ahead on the Waze map and called Damien to let him know that Jonah and I would be stopping for a while. Mel told us to have a good time, and Damien, Colleen, and Mel thanked us for coming and spending the day with them. I was surprised that the conversation with Jonah was easy and smooth during our drive back and as we parked and walked to the tavern. It was an early summer evening. The twilight had lasted quite a long time when we sat by the window and looked at the menu. We ordered drinks and food. I wanted to treat myself to a full serving of bourbon ribs, and Jonah ordered the Parmageddon chicken. For those wondering, it's Parmigiana scaled up, with more cheese, chips, and sauce. I felt the mood turn serious for a second. Thomas? The question was asked. I looked at her. I have already mentioned some of the general physical features of this woman who is now saving my life, but to go into more detail, Jonah is a native of Germany and grew up in this country until she was 4 years old and her parents immigrated to Australia. She was a natural numbers nerd and is now in graduate school while interning all over the country in short bursts to see Australia before finding somewhere to settle down. Physically, Jonah is quite small. She has long blonde hair and, as I mentioned, a sweet face with deep blue eyes that I thought I could fall in love with without too much trouble now that my marriage is over. I've already mentioned that she dresses conservatively in the office, but today I have to admit, I found myself watching her ass fill up her jeans more than once. At the same time, she was wearing a loose cotton shirt that several times hinted at a bra constricting her breasts, which must have been a decent size but hugged her body perfectly. When she reached out and took my hands in hers, I felt soft and supple skin and a tactile touch that spoke of real affection, not just friendship or lust. I can guess what you and Mal were talking about. And I know that you are in a difficult situation right now and you need a friend more than anything in the world. She took a hesitant breath. So, now I want to be, first of all, a friend for you. She stopped for a moment and looked away, still holding my hands. But we've known each other for a while now, and over the last couple of weeks. As we've gotten closer, I've realized there could be something more. I know. I like you more than a friend. Do you know what I mean? I smiled. I was touched. This woman made it clear to me that she was interested in something more than just friendship, even knowing that I was completely exhausted. Jonah, I started to say, but stopped. Her face sank, more like crushed when I stopped. She seemed to think it was a refusal. I squeezed her hands. Jonah, you are an amazing woman, and you are right. Right now, I need friends first. But to be honest with you, in the shock that I'm experiencing now, I kinda like you too. I left the rest without comment. Most of the time, we go from happiness to despair in an instant. It is much easier to make your world crumble from under your feet than to climb the mountain towards the sunlight. But Jonah managed to do it. At the first moment, I saw the thought of refusal. The next moment, an expression of serene joy appeared on her face. Her smile was ear to ear, and her big blue eyes looked at me with adoration. We spent the rest of the evening talking about likes and dislikes. We talked about movies, music, and, of course, Mustangs. I told her the story of losing my parents and grandparents, and her eyes widened when I confessed to her about my trust fund. So why do you work at Sayman and Zach's? She asked, shortly after my story. I shrugged. Initially, I planned to work there for a couple of years, just for the experience, I explained. I thought about working there for a bit, like you, to see different things, and I talked to my father about opening an investment company in a few years, but when they died, I just stayed there. The mention of my parents' death in connection with my trust was a little sobering for us. Sorry, Thomas. When I look at you, I don't see some rich, spoiled guy. I see a man who is focused but does not suffer fools, even if he has his own modesty. I snorted. Thank you. I'm serious. You're a good person, she lectured me. You haven't lost your temper yet, and you haven't gone and killed them yet, meaning my wife and her lovers. No, not the way they are going to treat me, I said dejectedly, without thinking. What? She said, her eyes widening. I realized what I said and continued to retell to Jonah the conversation of high-ranking officials that my private investigator had observed, that in a few years, they were all planning to screw me over so they could get some of the money after I became the father of Candace's baby. Jonah was shocked and began to cry by the end of the conversation. You're doing something about it, aren't you? I'm not a lawyer, but this should be a crime, she almost whispered to me. Her fingers squeezed my hand. She was worried, and I almost thought she would start looking for the killers. I nodded. Damien is on the case. Everything will happen at the end of next week. She let me go. Sorry, but Thomas, your wife is plotting to kill you, she said, with an almost hysterical note in her voice. We talked for a few more minutes, and as we walked back to my car, she held my hand, looking around almost constantly. It's okay, Jonah, I said, holding her hand in mine. I doubt that anyone is watching us, but if so, then I have a fast car here and we can overtake them. This made her laugh, and the rest of the way home our conversation was much more restrained. When I dropped her off, Jonah hugged me tightly, and in a moment of weakness, I kissed her chastely on the lips. We both blushed and smiled when we realized what we had just done, and we both knew there would be more to our relationship if we let it happen. As I drove away, I smiled. On the way to the new hotel where I was staying, I sang to the radio and felt the pain in my heart begin to subside, thanks to Damien, Mel, and Colleen, but most of all thanks to Jonah. I was a couple of streets away from the hotel when my phone rang. It was Candace. You could hear that she was in the bar. Baby, she said with a hint of concern in her voice. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you all day. Damn, I thought. I didn't answer her call. Sorry, Candace, I went to Phillip Island today with friends and their daughter to see the penguins. It was last minute and I got a little distracted. I felt the tension in her voice ease. Oh, okay. I was a little worried. Did you have a good day? She asked. Now the issue of me not communicating has been resolved. It was a wonderful day. Seeing penguins with children is amazing, I told her, letting the genuine feeling of joy I felt watching Colleen with the penguins flow into our conversation. They allow you to take a different look at the happiness you experience. I didn't lie. Watching Colleen with the penguins was funny. She loved feeding them the bait fish we bought and at one point made us all laugh when a group of penguins followed her in search of food. Oh, baby, maybe we can start trying to have a baby of our own when I get back. You got me thinking. That's right, I thought. Have a baby so you can poison me. Let's see, Candace. How is the conference going? Are you out? I asked, changing the subject. Oh, yes, the conference went great. We really worked out a lot, she said, unaware that I understood the hint she was using. And yes, a group of us, including my boss, are going to have a few drinks. Don't worry, my boss is keeping an eye on me so that no outsiders will encroach on my virtue. Surely, I thought, as if this woman had at least some virtue. After that, I lost interest in the conversation and let her talk to me for a few minutes about, well, I have no idea what she was talking about. I didn't listen anymore. She hung up and said, I love you, but I don't know if she noticed that I didn't love her back again. The next week, I came to work early every day so that I could get everything done that needed to be done. Given what was to come, I didn't want to leave any of my clients without a job. I was sure that both Mary and William were up to something with George and Candace, but I didn't know what it was, and as the week went on, I noticed that they were looking at me less and less, since I wasn't stuck out. I moved to another hotel. Why, well, despite all appearances. I was paranoid even before I found out about the plot to end my life. After that, I was just as scared as Jonah by the whole situation, so I changed my place of residence every 2 days. Most evenings that week I spent with Jonah. We had dinner and she helped me pack all my and Candace's things in my apartment. My things were sent free of charge to the warehouse hangar of the company in which I invested money several years ago. Candace's belongings were removed and placed elsewhere, with payment due within 60 days, giving her a couple of months to deal with what awaited her. We made it to Monday morning. It was game day. The crooks were due to return early in the morning, and I was due to make a month-long escape to Cairns in North Queensland. That morning I came to work as if it was a normal day. I attended a staff meeting where William told us that George would be back tomorrow. For the first time since I was brought up to speed, I noticed Mary looking at me while William told us. I noted that I should turn this over to Damien for conspiracy charges if they were involved in anything. Just before lunch, one group asked me if I would like to have lunch with them, and I politely declined. However, when they left, I ran the wipe on my laptop and walked out, leaving the keys and cards on the table. I wanted to leave a letter of resignation, but Damien's team had to deliver it this afternoon. As I was leaving the office, the corporate car driver opened his car door to greet me. We drove to the airport, and he informed me that our plane would be on time, while Jonah hugged me, giving me another one of those chaste kisses that I had already begun to adore. When we arrived at the airport, Damien and Mel were there to see us off. I gave my phone to the lawyer, and he, in turn, gave me a new phone with a new number. Only a few people knew this number, and this would continue to be the case for some time. Jonah and I flew business class to Cairns, enjoying champagne once we reached cruising level. I knew that around this time Candace would be flying home like the other scammers. When we landed, we were met by another driver who took Jonah and me to the nice bed and breakfast we had booked for the first week of our stay. I'm partial to guest houses, and I have to say this one was lovely. It was run by an elderly couple who had been together for 40 years. They built this duplex home when prices were cheap, and they had a house full of foster children. They now run the bed and breakfast for fun and company. In the morning, they gave us a full breakfast with bacon, eggs, tomatoes, toast, beans, and spinach. The coffee was not as good as at home from a capsule, but quite passable. But the house, had a magnificent view of the water. At sunset, we loved watching the play of colors in the small bay as the waves gently washed the path leading across the road to the esplanade. The room Jonah and I shared had a large king-size bed and its own attached bathroom with a double shower and spa bath. The owners told us that they had renovated it a few years ago and they had 2 king rooms and 4 deluxe rooms. The king rooms were luxurious and cost a little more, but I knew it was worth it. For the first 2 days, we were the only guests, so we could be a little more passionate. And passion, my God, Jonah, but let me digress. On the way from the airport to the guest house, I turned on my phone and received a single message from Damien. "It's all done. It's chaos. But you're a free man. Now turn off your phone and I'll talk to you in a few days." I did everything as I was told, and that evening after registering, I felt nervous for the first time. Both Jonah and I knew we would be in the same bed, and I think we were both nervous about our expectations of each other. None of us needed to worry. We showered separately and I climbed into bed, reading one of the novels from the library they kept downstairs. But when Jonah opened the bathroom door, I forgot about the book I was reading. So let's go back. Jonah is a small, sexy woman with long blonde hair, a cute face, big expressive blue eyes, a round ass and perky breasts. But no. When Jonah stood there in the bathroom light, I was shocked. She wore a sheer black teddy with just enough lace to cover her deepest secrets, and designer lace that accentuated her torso and made it look both exotic and beautiful. She was wearing heels that showed off her calves and looked nervous. I dropped the book I was reading and grunted as it hit my own instant erection and stood frozen in awe of the beauty before me. The woman who risked a lot to tell me about Candace's betrayal was letting me know that she had liked me for months. She came up to me. I stood up, pulled her into my arms, and our lips met in serene bliss. I felt her tongue press against mine, and then felt her body relax in my arms. Moments passed as if time had stopped. Feelings of friendship, Lust, and dare I say, even love were conveyed in that simple connection of lips. When we pulled away, we looked at each other. "I love you, Thomas," Jonah told me. "I love you too, Jonah," I answered instantly and seriously. "I've been struggling with this for the past week. I couldn't understand how I could fall in love so quickly while being betrayed and still married. But Jonah was more than just lust for me. First of all, she was my friend. She had no idea about my money until I told her, and she was furious with me when she found out what was in store for me. I'll be honest, I didn't know if it would last, but Jonah was there when I needed it. We wanted each other, so who was I to refuse the body of a beautiful woman? After laying her down on the bed, we spent time exploring each other, kissing, and exchanging messages of love and acceptance. Everything that happened next is beyond description. I could not imagine that it was possible to feel so much love. She allowed me to rise into the heavens and smoothly lowered me back onto the pillows. "Thank you," I told her. She looked up at me and smiled. "For what, exactly?" she asked me. "In general terms, for everything. For having the courage to say something even though it could have put you in a very awkward position. For being my friend and caring about me enough to not put pressure on me. And finally, for giving yourself to me." Jonah beamed. "Thomas, you're only the third man I've ever been with, and neither of the other two even came close to what you did to me." I then helped my new lover into the shower, and we washed each other slowly and thoroughly before laying down in bed and enjoying the loving touch. The next morning, I woke up to kisses. I smiled. Jonah was playing. "Good morning, baby. How are you feeling?" she asked, noticing that I had woken up. "Amazing. Last night was... Wow, seriously, Jonah, that was incredible," I replied, reaching out to stroke her cheek as she smiled at me. She lit up with praise. "So it worked," she nodded approvingly. "What worked?" I asked in bewilderment. "You forgot about the bitch." She paused and bit her lip, just like last night. "And you made me yours." "And I am yours now, Thomas. As long as you have me, my heart and soul are yours." She looked at me hopefully, and I pulled her towards me and kissed her. She sighed contentedly. "And I'm yours too, Jonah. Last night you gave me your all and trusted me with something that takes a lot of time for couples. I struggle with how quickly I fall in love with you, but it is so." We got dressed and went to breakfast. Our hosts wished us good morning and saw us off with knowing glances. The next few days were amazing. Jonah and I enjoyed the kitchen. We visited the amazing Daintree rainforest and even took a steam train and cable car ride. We snorkeled on the Great Barrier Reef and, of course, made love. Morning and evening, Jonah revealed her body to me. She encouraged me, but I should have known that I was the one who would never enjoy her body. By the end of the first week, I forgot about my phone. It wasn't until Damien and Mel showed up with Colleen that I remembered him. We agreed in advance that for the second week they would live in the same place as us. Damien chuckled and said it was okay. That evening at dinner, he had his own story. "Well, the waste must have gotten into the rotating device," he said, as Colleen went back to her room to watch a movie so the adults could talk. He leaned over. "A total of 9 people have been arrested over the past week on charges of conspiracy to commit murder." "What?" Jonah and I said at the same time. Damien chuckled. "Yes," he said, a lawyerly grin spreading across his face. "Based on the affidavits we were able to obtain on your behalf and the police interviews, there have been 5 in the last week that you know of, including your former boss and your soon-to-be ex-wife, the office manager at your former workplace, the other owner, and 2 others at Candace's work were involved." Leaning back in my chair, I exhaled. 9 people wanted me dead?" I asked. "Sort of," Damien told us. "They all admitted that they had nothing specific against you. Indeed, they all said that you were a very nice guy. But they had an agreement whereby each of them would receive at least a couple of $1 million from your trust, a few years after your death. Of course, they all blamed each other, well, except for Candace. She broke down when she returned home to find you gone, photos, and divorce papers telling the story. She is currently being held in a secure wing of the local Ramsey Hospital for observation. I delivered your letter of resignation and noticed that you are personally suing your former place of employment, he told me, smiling at the memory. They are now closed for business, and all employees have stopped working immediately. Of course, no one thinks they will survive. A similar situation occurs at Candace's work. Oh, and I was there too, to deliver the notices and see Mr. Randwick Johnston arrested. I must say, it was very pleasant from a professional point of view. They didn't take any money from me for this. He winked at me and I laughed. What about Roger? I asked. He was also arrested. His wife thought he was at work and not having sex with the wife of one of his friends. I called her and asked that we represent her interests pro bono. It was the least I could do. Mel slapped Damien. Baby, stop teasing. We all laughed and spent the next hour asking for details. At one point, Mel looked at Jonah and I holding hands and commented, Well, it didn't take you too long, did it? She said. Jonah just looked at me and blushed, then at Damien. Then Mal laughed. I made him claim me on our first night, she told the couple in front of us. Then I made sure he never left the room without seeing some part of me naked. I don't think he had a single free minute to think about these idiots. Damien exhaled the coffee through his nose and Mal laughed. I just smiled like a Cheshire cat. Mel looked at me. I think you'll be fine, Thomas, she said, looking at Jonah and me. I know she's a keeper. They stayed with us for the next week, and we enjoyed day trips around the area, overnight stays in casinos, and even a light plane flight to the Daintree coast. At the end of the week, they headed home to Melbourne and we caught a plane to Brisbane. Jonah introduced me to her parents in Brisbane as her boyfriend, and I enjoyed playing the role. Back in a major metropolis, one evening we were on the news about a murder plot. My name wasn't mentioned, but when Jonah told her parents it was me, they almost panicked until we told them the story. I have never met more honest and reliable people when we went through our research with them. We spent another week sightseeing in Brisbane and then another week in Sydney. By that time, a month had already passed. Neither Jonah nor I could imagine ourselves without each other. Towards the end of the trip, we started talking about marriage and children. I told her that as soon as I got divorced, we would get engaged. It wasn't a traditional proposal, but she still loved me, knowing that when the time came, I would get down on one knee in front of her. When the topic of children came up, she blushed. Thomas, I have a confession, she said, clinging to me after we made love in our hotel room overlooking the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I might be pregnant, she said shyly, trying to gauge my reaction. She sighed. Until we had sex, I never thought about contraception, but for the last month we have had sex so often and neither of us even thought about contraception. My period should start in a few days and then we will know everything. She looked at me intently again. You're angry? I snorted. No. I thought about it several times, I admitted. Honestly, I was hoping that we could get pregnant by accident. Over the past month, I can't think of anyone else I'd rather have a baby with than you. Unfortunately, she woke up this morning with her period. I kissed her on the cheek and said maybe next month. In the meantime, we need to practice a lot. Eventually, we ended our holiday and headed back to Melbourne. We stopped for the night at Jonah's apartment. She managed to persuade her landlord to keep her for a few more months instead of her original plans to go north. It was a small apartment, half an hour's drive from the city. After staying in every hotel across the country for the past month, Jonah was a little confused about her accommodations. I stopped her and spent the next half hour walking around the apartment, asking the most pointless questions about everything. By the end, she was giggling and coming up with fancy answers. The next day, we went to Damien's office. Jonah and I worked there, looking at new places to live. During lunch, Mel brought us both coffee. Mel, what are you doing here? Asked Jonah. A little bird told me that you two were here, and I decided to come see how you were doing and bring you coffee. Freshly brewed, of course. She set them down on the table and took a sip of her coffee as Jonah sighed. What happened, Jonah? Mal asked, sensing the worry in her sigh. Jonah shrugged. Not very good, Mel. He hasn't gotten me pregnant yet. A few moments later, Mal was splashing coffee on the boardroom table. Excuse me? I laughed. Jonah and I are going to try to have a baby. After the past month, we just decided to see if it would work. It's fast, Mal said, perhaps a little worried. We both nodded to our friend. Perhaps, Jonah said dismissively, but it's still fun to practice. And there is no one in this world with whom I would rather have a child, she said, looking at me with adoration. Mel looked at us, studying us, and suddenly shrugged her shoulders. She then asked what we were doing in the office. As soon as she found out that we were looking for a house, she immediately joined the conversation. She spent the next couple of hours working with us, helping us identify our wants and needs, location, and what we might need if we were going to have a baby. At one point, Damien walked in on his way to court and smiled at me as he overheard two women talking in the kitchen. Over the next month, we looked at several places and eventually settled on 3 apartments and a house. Jonah gave in to me, saying that it was my money and she would be happy as long as I was by her side. I replied that this would be our place and we would choose it together. We ended up choosing a sub-penthouse apartment in a slightly older building at the bottom of Collins Street. It had fairly easy access to major highways, public transport, and, like everywhere else in Melbourne, food was within walking distance. The apartment itself was great. It had 3 modest bedrooms and a large master bedroom. The windows had a beautiful view of Melbourne Park, where tennis tournaments and the Australian Open are held. The house had a swimming pool, sauna, and gym, as well as a 24-hour concierge. We had 2 spaces in the garage, and I was able to park my Mustang and the new Jeep I bought for Jonah. Overall, it felt like an enlarged B&B that we could call home. The apartment was sparsely furnished, but after dinner with Mal, that all changed. We moved within a month, which was good because Jonah's period never came that month. It's now almost 9 months since it all started. Now, Jonah is 6 months along with our baby. We've settled into the apartment, and it seems like every surface has some kind of soft protection for the baby. We turned one of the rooms into a children's room, another into a guest bedroom, and the third into an office for work. On the work front, Jonah and I started a new investment business. At the moment, we have little funds, only a couple of million, since I am still a couple of years away from receiving a trust. But Jonah is good with numbers and has a good head on her shoulders. She owns 10% of the new venture. She said she didn't want anything, but I got Mel to convince her. To be honest, this is the only fight we've had to date. Right now I own 70%, we have an investor with 15%, and the last 5% belongs to Damien and Mel. They became very close friends, and the difference between Damien the lawyer and Damien the friend never ceases to amaze me. As a lawyer on my side, he was a powerful force that needed to get out of his way or be destroyed. He managed to get judgments against both of my old jobs, mine and Candace's. Both companies are currently in administration, but at the time this happened, they had a lot of liquid assets. So he told me there would be a sizable check coming for both Jonah and me. He also secured a win for Roger's wife, where almost all of the assets went to her, as he is now in prison, where he will spend the next 30 years along with almost everyone involved in the plot to kill me. I received one message from William and George begging for mercy, which I quickly tore up in front of Damien when he showed me his pearly white teeth. And finally, he took great pleasure in tearing apart my former lawyer on the stand during the trial. I haven't mentioned Candace too much so far, but it's not because she got away with it. She actually got 35 years, no parole. The only people in court who sympathized with her when the verdict was announced were her parents. However, after they heard what she did and what she planned to do, I think even then their support was close to zero. The trial judge immediately granted a divorce based on the crimes against me. He noted his disgust at their behavior and the fact that they had ruined so many lives. According to the prenuptial agreement, Candace left with her property and $15,000 to start her life over. I put the money into a trust fund with interest when she gets out of jail. Due to mental illness, she was not present in court. She was still in a secure psychiatric unit and was scheduled to be transferred to the medical unit of a medium-security prison within a month of sentencing. Her only request was that I visit her as soon as she calms down. I agreed on the grounds that it would not interfere with the divorce. 6 weeks later, I sat in a secure conference room in the medical wing of the prison where Candace was being held. The room was simple: a table with bolts, chairs with chains, one of those one-way mirrors you always see in the movies. I sat there for probably 10 minutes when the doctor and the guard brought my ex-wife in. She looked like 6 kinds of hell. Her usual straight brown hair was loose along its entire length. It seemed like she was trying to comb them in some places, but not in others. Next were the eyes. They moved around as if she was looking for something. She didn't look like she was in any danger, but she did look like she was looking for a threat. When she saw me, she seemed to concentrate, and an eerie calm descended on her. The doctor frowned, but retreated to a corner. The third and most obvious thing is that my ex-wife was very, very pregnant. As she sat, I looked at her belly and Candace smiled. "Actually, I'm almost a week late, Thomas," she told me, running her hands over her swollen belly. "They told me that if I didn't give birth to our baby within 24 hours, they would have to put me into labor. Is this okay, Thomas? Our child, Candace—" I caught a wave from the doctor and stopped. "It's okay, Candace," I told her. "Let them help you so you can have a baby." She seemed to relax. "Thomas, I want you to know that I never wanted to see you dead. I didn't care about your money, but they all convinced me," Candace told me sadly. "They told me that after we give birth to your baby, it would be the right time. I didn't want to do anything to you, but they told me that if I didn't do it, they would do it anyway. It would be much more cruel, and I would be left with nothing. Thomas, my love, you have to believe me." She stopped and waited. I looked at the doctor and he shrugged. "Candace," I began to say. "It's okay, Thomas," she said, interrupting me. She gave me a sad smile, looking into my eyes for a moment before they pulled away again. "I know that we got divorced. I understand this, but when our child is born, I am sure that they will release me, and I will make amends to you. All those things that I did, honey, they all meant nothing to me. You should know that I love only you. Thomas." She looked up at me again, her gaze pleading. "Can you forgive me?" I paused. "Candace." She started again, interrupting me again. "It's okay, Thomas. Our child will help you forgive me. We have this baby and I'll come out. Then we can be a family. Sex meant nothing, and I promise I won't let them kill you anymore." She started to delirium. "I love you, Thomas. You are my #1 guy. They're all #2. Thomas, it will just be you and me here, and of course, our child." For the next 15 minutes, she raved about our baby, about us getting back together, about her getting out and us being a family. At some point she stopped, and the doctor and I looked at each other, and then we heard a sob. "I know I screwed up, Thomas," she said quietly, a hint of sanity and reservation appearing in her voice that was not there before. "I know that this child is not yours, and you and I will never—" She shuddered with sobs. "The drugs they give me calm me down, make me think it's possible. But in between their effects and when they wear off, I have moments when I remember how terrible I was." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. The pain was reflected in her eyes. "I betrayed everyone. I often betrayed you, and then I was going to poison you. I'm a terrible wife who deserves revenge." She was starting to get excited. "I know you hate me, Thomas, and I am cursed for still loving you as much as the day I betrayed you." Slowly, Candace looked at me, and then at the doctor. The doctor, sensing that everything was coming to an end, gently turned to my ex-wife. "I think it's time for us to have dinner and for you to take your next round of medicine, don't you think, Candace?" The guard outside took her away. Candace looked at me one last time, a small, sad smile on her face. "Live a good life, Thomas." And with that, she left. A week later, her doctor called me and thanked me for meeting with her. He told me that everything went better than he expected, and Candace gave birth to a girl. The child was healthy, and they were conducting a DNA test to find the father. Candace told them to give the baby up for adoption so the girl would grow up in a loving family instead of going through the foster care system in hopes of one day being near her, which she knew wouldn't happen. That night after meeting Candace, I was in a bad mood until Jonah laid my head on her stomach and I felt our son kicking. 2 months later, John Thomas was born. I thought about the innocent little girl, and in a moment of weakness, I asked Damien to contact the adoption agency and ask about the possibility of adopting the little girl Candace. Another 2 months passed, and little Macy Candace came to live with us. We learned that she was Randy's child, and Damien happily sued the disgraced lawyer for child support again. In the end, a meager amount was set aside for her university fund. Of course, she would never need them, but they were the basics. Jonah, for his part, never treated his daughter Candace any differently than he treated his own children. We both felt that a child should not suffer for the sins of his parents. Jonah and I got married a year later, when the children were already walking, and then during our honeymoon, we gave them a little sister. A year and a half after that, a little brother. When Macy turned 18, we told her the truth about where she came from, our history with her birth parents, and how, no matter what, we loved her. There was a lot of emotion in the apartment that week, but talking to Aunt Mel calmed her down and let her know that Jonah and I would always be her parents. Over the past years, Candace has recovered enough to be released into a general colony. She was still fragile, but her doctors told us that several prisoners were keeping an eye on her and keeping her from getting into too much trouble. When Candace saw Macy standing there with Jonah and me, she understood and broke down, dropping to her knees in the visitors' area, covering her mouth and sobbing. Macy, being the well-mannered young woman she was, came over and helped her to her feet, walking with her to the table. Jonah and I stood to the side and watched as Macy extended her hand and said to Candace, "Hi, my name is Macy Candace, and my mom and dad told me that you are my biological mother." We watched as Candace burst into tears again. The guards were watching, but we warned them in advance that this would happen, and the warden allowed a little cuddling on the condition that Candace then undergo a full-body search. I must admit that I was even moved by the scene when my adopted daughter and my ex-wife stood in front of me. Jonah looked up at me and wiped away a tear, exclaiming that it must be pollen. A little later, my wife dragged me to my ex-wife, and we spent the next hour talking. Candace thanked me for adopting Macy. She had no idea what happened to her after she abandoned her, and didn't even know her name. My adoption of her daughter changed a lot for Candace, and her doctors told us that her behavior improved markedly after that. She still had a little less than half of her sentence left, but the prison told us that after this meeting, she became a much more exemplary prisoner. For her part, Macy went to Candace's for her birthday and Christmas. They had never been very close, but at the insistence of her mother and Aunt Mel, she went to see her. For my part, I reluctantly gave my consent. I was ready for forgiveness, but Candace knew as well as I did that we would never be friends. As for Jonah and me, she is still the woman who makes my soul sing. Once she already decided to let me know that I was being taken for a fool. She still arranges situations where we make love anywhere. She guards me with jealousy and is friendly towards anyone. But if she sees anyone making moves towards me, she swears at them in German. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.